I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Dialogue is one of the most important parts of any screenplay for film or television. This is because speech is a primary way humans communicate. When I say speech, I don't mean it in isolation, but in conjunction with body language, tone of voice, and inflection.
And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers.
All of which form the basis of any kind of visual storytelling that involves people. This is the thing. Writing amazing dialogue is not actually as difficult as you may think, and has more to do with what you don't write as opposed to what you do. Yes, silence and when to use silence is one of the more powerful dialogue writing techniques you can learn as a screenwriter. Once you understand this, and the other concepts I'm going to talk about in this video, you'll realize a lot of the work of great dialogue is done before you write the first hello.
You talking to me?
And if you get your dialogue wrong, your screenplay is dead in the water on page 1.
I'll be back.
In 1995, Michael Mann made a movie called Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, legends. It focuses on De Niro's Neil McCauley, the leader of a bank heist crew, and Pacino's Vincent Hanna, the head of a team of detectives who are trying to stop the heist crew before their next big score. It's classic cops and robbers on a grand scale. Detective Hanna sits down with Neil in a diner midway through the film, and they engage in one of the most iconic dialogue scenes in cinema history.
Brother, you are going down.
It's one of the best examples of multiple aspects of good dialogue writing and performance. If you haven't seen the film, I suggest you do after we get through this examination. So let's define what we mean by dialogue to make sure we're all on the same page. These are the words written in your script that will be spoken by your characters, not what you say people said as you would in a novel, not descriptions of conversations, not thoughts that are in the characters' heads like speech bubbles in a comic book. Only the words that are spoken and heard by the audience.
Are you not entertained?
This is what a block of dialogue would look like in a screenplay. Now, the first thing you need to do is understand who your characters are. This sounds simple, but many writers, new or experienced, go into their screenplays without really knowing their characters. This means, who are they? Where did they come from? What do they want? And why do they want it? If you can answer those questions, you're getting warm. Of course, there's much more to character development, but for the sake of this video, we'll stop there. If you don't or can't answer these questions, then all your characters start sounding the same, or worse, sounding like versions of you. I would know because that is what I used to do when I started 22 years ago. Characters in a screenplay are representations of people who should feel real or relatable, but whose main purpose is to move the story and narrative forward. You're essentially tricking the audience into believing your characters exist or existed in a galaxy far, far away.
Use the Force, Luke. Let go, Luke.
If a character in your screenplay doesn't serve your story, that character shouldn't be there. So who is Detective Hanna? Obsessive detective. Where does he come from? Los Angeles native. What does he want? To stop bank robbers and heist men. Why does he want it? Because it's the only thing in his life he is good at and has control over. These are things you need to know as the writer and then decide how and when to convey them to your audience in the screenplay, not only through what they do, but what they say and how they say it.
She got a great ass!
Next we have Neil McCauley. Who is he? Bank robber, obsessed with his job. Where does he come from? A loner who has no identifiable origin. What does he want? Ruthless and principled with his job, and wants to take down one more big score. What is important here is that there are gaps in their stories that we want filled. There is mystery about both of them, and this is something you must always have with your characters. Don't give everything away up front. This allows you to reveal elements of their personality when it matters most in your screenplay. So, through the movie, Detective Hanna and his team of detectives are after Neil and his crew. Then Detective Hanna stops Neil's car on the highway, but the detective suspects him. Neil knows of the detective, but they've never met in person till this moment. It's therefore a major moment in the story. What you will immediately notice is the use of silence, as I mentioned, a powerful tool in writing dialogue. We know there is tension because of who they are and what the moment represents in the story. This is something that helps you write dialogue that is engaging because it's about the control and flow of information between the characters and the audience.
McNeil is tough, as they say.
So what does this do? It establishes Detective Hannah's acumen as a detective and that he most likely has more information about Neil than he's letting on. This is a really great way to improve your dialogue writing. You must think through the mind of the characters, not yourself. This isn't about us as the writer or even the audience watching. It's about Neil, the character, getting to know who Detective Hannah is. So the question you always ask yourself is, what would your character say in that moment? Not what you would say in that moment. Importantly, when the detective asks Neil if the prison he was incarcerated in is as tough as they say, Neil doesn't respond, but the answer is given through his silence. This is something that would be written on the page as a beat or a pause. The beat denotes a pause in dialogue, and a written pause is generally a longer moment of silence. These two screenplay cues can be used in many ways I won't go into here, but you can really make them your own depending on your style of screenwriting. I have a very distinct way of using beat and pause cues that have become part of my style. Those who are regular readers of my screenplays know how I use them, and they get a rhythm to my type of dialogue. As I said, silence is your secret weapon. You simply need to know when to use it for maximum impact in your dialogue.
You looking to go back? You know, I chased down some crews, guys just looking to fuck up, get busted back. That you?
You must have worked some dipshit crews.
I worked all kinds.
These lines are an example of how you display character. Everyone has a way of talking. You know the phrase, "that's something he would say," when you're talking about someone you know. That is how you need to view writing dialogue for your characters, and it is something you're seeing on display here. We are getting a sense of Detective Hannah and Neil's personalities, not just from what they're saying, but how they're saying it. The detective doesn't really care about whether Neil wants to go back to jail or not. Neil doesn't care about whether the detective has an interest in penology. If you'd watched the film, you would know by this point the detective and Neil actually know enough about each other as professionals to make a determination of what they're up against. One a cop, the other a robber. What they don't know is who they are as men. This is where another technique of dialogue comes in: subtext in the words. Pacino could go right to the statement, "I know who you are and I'm onto you." But what would that do for the scene? Nothing. Instead, he describes a common type of criminal, knowing that Neil will react out of pride. He isn't one of those dummies who commits crimes in the hopes of going back to prison. This not only asks a question, but defines the detective as one with experience, which he backs up when he says,
I worked all kinds.
I said Neil's line was more about his ego than wanting a response. So what does this line of dialogue tell us about him? He's a criminal who takes pride in his work and considers himself at a certain level of prestige. Sure, he's on the opposite side of the law, but his dedication to his craft is evident with that line and its delivery.
You see me doing thrill seeker liquor store holdups with a Born to Lose tattoo on my chest?
No, I do not.
Right.
All this is what is known as subtext, the meaning beneath what is actually said. We read between the lines that he's not like other bank robbers. He's better than them, and he doesn't do this for fun. He plays to win. Now, Neil's next line is about to define who he is.
I am never going back.
Then don't take down scores.
I do what I do best. I take scores. You do what you do best, trying to stop guys like me.
Now that is conviction, and it also tells us he didn't enjoy his time in prison. We're then left to imagine the horrors he saw there. This is done by the detective's line,
McNeil is tough, as they say.
The combination of that and Neil's response tells us a lot. But again, notice how neither of them actually said what the prison was like, yet we know. In fact, it is actually more powerful than if they told us exactly what happened. Okay, so we're really into this now, and you've learned a number of dialogue techniques from the scene. Remember what I told you at the beginning of the video about character? Well, those rules help you in dialogue scenes like this. We now know who these two men are. We know where they come from in terms of basic background, and we know what they want. But do we really know why they want it? Not yet. But we will later in the dialogue with the use of another really powerful technique. What we do have by this point is a very important element of a character arc in any story for film and television. We know who is stopping these men from getting what they want: each other.
I got a stepdaughter so fucked up because her real father's this large type asshole. I got a wife. We're passing each other on the downslope of a marriage, my third. Because I spend all my time chasing guys like you around the block. That's my life.
The middle section of this scene continues to build their characters and personas as men. But what is most compelling is that it shows how similar they actually are. The strength of this dialogue is that not only do the characters discover new things about each other, but we as the audience also discover new things about them. This is all done without expressly saying too much. We continue to see how silence and omission of words and details can convey information as effectively or more effectively than saying them.
Guy told me one time, don't let yourself get attached to anything you are not willing to walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner.
After Detective Hannah tells Neil, that single line is the theme of the entire film. Now, if you've seen Heat, the dialogue here would hit you much harder. The line encompasses everything I've talked about in this video. The reason this line of dialogue worked is because of all the groundwork done before it. Your dialogue will shine if you set up your screenplay correctly, and that dialogue will amplify your work that's already there. Then we get the tragedy of their lives when they say this to each other.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's that or we both better go do something else, pal.
I don't know how to do anything else.
Neither do I.
I don't much want to either.
Neither do I.
We realize here that neither man can change. This then sets up where the conversation is going to go. You see that smile there? That is something you would or could write in your script, and it means so much. It's the moment where the characters realize they're the same people on different sides of the law. In a different world, they'd be friends. And you know what's interesting? That's exactly where the conversation is about to go. What we're seeing is a carefully building dynamic. Not one word is wasted, yet it feels natural and seamless. As a screenwriter, when you're working on dialogue, you have the power to write actions and expressions in place of actual words to convey meaning. You should always take full advantage of that because it's what will elevate your dialogue from amateur to advanced. My characters used to say absolutely everything they were thinking. Now I make decisions on if that is or is not necessary. Sometimes it is, but you need to know that you're making that decision and why. Now, what happens next in the dialogue in this scene is a technique you would have seen used a lot by very established screenwriters, especially Quentin Tarantino. This is the use of storytelling by a character to convey a message.
You know, I have this recurring dream. I'm sitting at this big banquet table, and all the victims of all the murders I ever worked are sitting at this table, and they're staring at me with these black eyeballs because they got 8-ball hemorrhages from the head wounds.
It shows he's been haunted by the scars of his job and his inability to save those victims. Neil then talks about his dream.
I have one where I'm drowning. And I gotta wake myself up and start breathing or I'll die in my sleep.
He's afraid of running out of time. So now the dialogue gave us a valuable piece of information. The detective feels responsible for all the people he didn't save from men like Neil. And with that, we have the answer to the final question. Why do they want what they want? What do these characters want as men? Not as professionals, as humans. This connects us to them and allows us to understand them. This has all been achieved through dialogue without expressly saying what they mean. Our minds filled in the gaps, and that makes the impact far more powerful than if the writer had spelled everything out for us. That is, until the end of the conversation.
If it's between you and some poor bastard whose wife you're gonna turn into a widow, brother, you are going down.
We've been face to face, yeah. But I will not hesitate. Not for a second.
Detective Hannah and Neil both make threats to each other about what they're willing to do to get what they want. This sets up a collision between the two men. And when Neil says,
Well, maybe we'll never see each other again.
the silence tells us they will collide, and it's going to resolve that ultimate question set up in the dialogue. Neither man will back down, and someone is going to go home in a body bag. This is compelling dialogue. This is provocative. This is engaging. This will make your reader want to turn the next page of your screenplay. I would advise you to rewatch this video with the Heat diner scene playing next to it. Analyze what I've said and think about how you could incorporate these techniques into your own writing. Remember that you won't be able to write amazing dialogue without setting up your characters correctly and doing the groundwork with your outline. And of course, finally, the directing, setting, acting, and delivery of these lines mean a lot too. This scene wouldn't resonate the same if random untalented actors were saying the lines. Sure, but don't be disheartened if this all felt like a lot and you don't fully understand everything. You're not meant to on the first go round, and it took me many years to really get a grasp of how to do what was done in the dialogue in this scene. To help you get on your way, these playlists give you more insight on developing your screenwriting, and make sure to sign up to my free newsletter linked in the description.